Elohim's legion, hear your name be told. Exceptions too, they lead on foot with the next. Then proceed, but not until. See, republic, more importantly than being a democracy, doesn't even have to be a democracy to defend the most important part about the republic. Pantheism was revealed for this because pantheism is about the invisible but still discernible, and or about the extent. It's about the invisible but still discernible. It comes with a contemplation. It says moderation helps everyone feel safe to help to build. So I want you to understand where and how an identity of hyper sophistication was entrenched in later semi-ancient times. By the end of later ancient semi-ancient times, a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise. It is more probable and it is increasingly demonstrable. Forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded. The individual names of the species body of volume. Not realizing the need to react to as fact-human nature to things like criminal insidiousness, criminal foreign influences, and not knowing how to do it properly. Because of the nature of the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, there are proofs that a criminal enterprise with countries grouped, and individuals that had collusions, and they were going to get caught. So they figured out a way not to get caught before they got caught. And they forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded the countries now out of to defend themselves as fact-human nature, not knowing how to do it properly, and to defend that, not realizing they'd be defending more and more. Syntax and uses of the law, the nature of the law, uses of how nature's system works, we are additionally, as ourselves, ground's voice. We are additionally the voice of that group. See, species individual grouped and species together, species volume. The group part, it wants us to discern more than the difference of one or two sides. The only way to tell is with a method of contemplation that contemplates if we are positive, if a conviction or if an opinion or a theory or something that could be developed would be positive or negative, not just temporary, not just for long term. It means temporary. It means positive or negative. That is the identity that is space/existence. It is space distinctly. It is existence distinctly, while being itself as them non-distinctly. And hyper simultaneously, it shows us where and how the way it is, everything is an increasing identity of volume. All exception in nature that appeared to be a demonstration of other also had left out and replaced all the ways. Actually, honest science always reveals that. How a special difference, for example, couples with what is variable and makes it equal to what is constant. Where one identity of volume can make more of its identity of volume through temporary, through identities that can't be its equal volume, can't make more of its volume, except for the value we are simultaneously, not just as individual group, species, body, not just as the other species, individual group, species, body, but as a hyper identity, a hyper simultaneous there. These are three distinct identities of simultaneous nature. Sequence slash simultaneous nature. Well, simultaneous nature slash sequence nature. There is a trinity that is inseparable from all parts of itself. While simultaneously there are five identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature that are at the same time, but they are grouped two different ways, three different ways. And this is weird in how it is increasingly different ways functional, how it is hyper invisible, but still discernible. Where there are conjunctions with languages, there are conjunctions as nature, as a coordinating conjunction, a correlative conjunction, or as a subordinated conjunction. That's invisible, but still discernible. And simultaneously, for example, there is ground. There's conjunction as a word. Could be an and. Could be used as a correlative conjunction or coordinating. Could be but. A subordinated conjunction as a word. See, this is where the relativity of ground comes in with the electrical engineering of language /S. Same reason, grouped. Locations, ages, areas, sexes. There is the identity of space / existence that answers and already answered the questions to the ancients that they couldn't fathom, we'd forget. Because they never saw it coming. With their proofs they left out, one of the proofs of this is logic has left out the significance of criminally foreign influence database relationships and uses of them by a torture / slavery method that was sickly distinctly against everyone too, specifically to keep it how sickly non-distinctly not discerned. In all exceptions and exception nature, self-valued. Used by people trying to counter that, not even realizing self-value, blaming on other things, others, or selves, even when correctly, exactly the way it wanted to and needs. Simultaneously, as defenses of opinions and convictions and tactical delusions that cannot defend themselves in a forward. Short words as they were intended and are intended to be defended by the Constitution unabridged. Marbury versus Madison. Taught right. Marbury versus Madison. I was taught real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, is what Marbury versus Madison means. See, we have notions on when there are crazy things that group people do. Don't forget all locations. Science reveals a whole bunch of ways that honesty could not and still can't, because they blamed on other things, others, ourselves, the real causes of the worst negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures in the suburbs, let alone the cities. The ancients found themselves bound as individual names, as grouped names. Grouped conjunctions with this. Don't forget to the hyperconjunction too, that's an only increasing volume. That which is hyper invisible but still discernible, but using science. Science reveals that is more probable and is increasingly demonstrable that pantheism is about a method of contemplation that nature itself employed. Just like when you employ your identity to do something for all the parts of your body. where there is no criminal foreign influences involved. Where there are no criminal foreign influences involved. There are criminal and foreign influences involved with blaming slavery, with blaming Jim Crow laws on other things or others ourselves, even when correctly, if doing it the way it needed to keep it blamed wrong. Applied as an application, as employments that were sustained before then while formal economic employments. Therefore, identities of titles, identities of jobs, identities of locations now through a filter additional to the one as nature, where its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. You could discern, if you use honesty, the Native Americans as one body. Their words, their syntax, while simultaneously all black, they put black, and they made it so they could use countries remotely from abroad, and where they couldn't use them remotely for abroad. They have all the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures already blamed on other things other than themselves, and it's true. If you enslave a white guy and tell that white guy, force that white guy to enslave a pink guy and sustain that, it's a truth used as a lie. Just like if they say, I didn't read the book about it. I have to read that book. The one with Uncle Tom. How come every time Uncle Tom comes brought up, the obligations the scientists had, instead of using that and blaming other things other themselves, when people use passions and emotions, they don't blame it on the breaching method. The breaching method heard sickly every distinct difference because it knew that nature was going to it uses different ways other. We have black pupils, whites of eyes. It is hyper evidential that has been left out from the conversation. It is increasingly valued to understand how slavery had been forced and sustained before our founders were even born. And the only reason they were able to win the revolution because they were only capable of temporary counter-extortion of people north and south simultaneously. Now the laws were so crazy to be able to use people from remote individually grouped together, they would hurt each other. Because everyone, even grouped, they were enslaved. See suits and ties. See the counters to it. Also see Native American dress comes with additional cipher. That's why additionally to having a president, as the Republic has a Native chief. There are proofs that before the Legion moved the first time, it was consciously trying to figure out instead, in accordance with the will, not just with the will, in accordance as the system that really causes, and how to know, how to check if you're going to cause positive value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures, or negative value, nature, progression, acts, and natures. Now, to maintain effective, complete possessions / hyperpossessions. Remember, the breaching method had hyperpossessions over everyone. Then it forced all roles. So now all roles have possessions over everyone. And now they're doing their jobs. Psycho. More and more sustained. We are a value / value progression. So now people have to react syntactically. Increasingly, they can't do it, so they do it the way they're told or influenced to simultaneously. And or they attach everyone to fake words, change words. And they try to address that They do it. They also attach everyone with fake words with them around us. All formal treatments of the law have stayed in collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and other natures of criminal insidiousness, and shared time to motivation per uses of the system that was with databases since before computers. So they want and need to have debates about things with peak sophistication, just call people names. And then they say, they don't, you know what I mean? That's not law. They cannot defend themselves on paper, so they switch names, forge names. Hundreds of countries that hate each other. They have nuclear weapons pointed at each other. That's because through our schools, they have the same collusion. They have those fake sides self-valued, and that being haven't been used remotely. They're pretending they could speak for passions and emotions. Anyway, then what? You're supposed to fight with them. They're not using real premises that are true always. God is more probably having been revealed by the ancients of algebra with as a variable associated with this contemplation. That is the natural employment. So your jobs, steward, your bosses want you to contemplate and use your minds increasingly unnaturally, increasingly leaving out finite details, increasingly leaving out the revelations that come when you don't leave finite details out and when you use what is simultaneously known to yourselves. So the Republic. This is a Heritage Dictionary. This Heritage Dictionary has two definitions of republic. Where the heck is republic? Excuse me. I just wanted to show you though, because okay. Unbelievable. P. I thought it was on this page. I was on the wrong page. So this defines. Here we go. PQRS. It must be at the end of this page here. Okay, here it is. Republic. There are only two definitions given with this Heritage Dictionary. A government in which the head of state is usually a president. The second definition, a country governed by the elected representatives of its people. They left out where the republic came from. Don't forget, they left out the sustained breaching method against Native Americans, individually grouped and together. Don't forget, they left out why and how. It is not president or chief. It is both, but they are incompatible volumes, but one way. And further, so Leaf of Hadith, for example, there are proofs that the ancients revealed using science. This is a negative identity of relationship to itself. And with Earth's special difference not appreciated here, so forced away from here as an identity of negative, as a negative identity of relationship to itself, where it has a concentrated role with consciousness. Note where humanity is the only species, let alone self-valued criminally foreign, we're only species criminally foreign influenced. And self-valued at that rolls with it because the real role, If force the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, if there were going to be roles with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, that's simultaneously criminal insidiousness natures of negative treatments, roles, and of identity treatments. Lawyers, sickly distinctly from the interbranch, have self-valued uses of words like reparations, for worse than a carrot, put in the minds of tactically delusions wrought Americans A through Z, having been using forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to use tactical ulterior from what our founders communicated to us. Communications regarding the theories, opinions, and convictions and tactical delusions, still formally no timed collusions with the overt, sustained, slash simultaneously insidious sustained impositions. People, foreign countries, people that want to come here, but they're still blaming our founders for slavery. Oh, but we love America, though. They don't know what they're talking about because they came through sickly distinctly to hide how sickly non-distinctly campuses. Russians and Americans, demonstrably Ukraine, too. They have roles with psychiatry, psychology, with databases since before our founders were even born. Entertained with courts, entertained with conjunctions to the Databases Act, where sciences are manifest schools, where ages of correlation are manifest. Each age of correlation nature simultaneously has a might that the other ages don't have to be able to discern. So it will only keep positive, everything increasingly positive. All exception, nature, and demonstration, the same thing. Will only stay positive to all parts of space / existence to an extent. Then it concentrated Earth's a special difference. It concentrated its a special difference. Relative to where and how it made 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. Distinctly increase their same, simultaneously increase their distinctness while increasing the value of their non-distinctness as itself, while increasing the quality of diffusion we are as a value / value progression, as a trinity, simultaneously with 2 identities of possession coming from and 2. And it's coming 2 from, with, 2 from, as, with, and for itself, as each thing. Boxing. And so it is more probable, for example, and is increasingly demonstrable, that extreme Islam is more probable to convict. It is more practical to convict, increasingly. Is about 5 identities of positive that can be programmed, for example. To use logic, tactically ulterior, from its identity system perfect, only increasingly valuable. But the way to discern is if it's positive to itself at once or not. If you contemplate what New York City was made as, top-down infrastructure, tactically denatured ground, It was designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. If you contemplate the suburbs designed before our founders were even born, with slavery entrenched in northern colonies, southern colonies, as a system already having been sustained, all roles are your sensed and hurt and worse. And everyone attached to fake words anyway. That's part of the way they could measure and maintain collusions for the different ways that all the different identities of criminal insidiousness were effectively kept needing to hide the same syntactical / hypersyntactical possessions over their thought, over their roles and means to use fake integrity of logic and of titles and of jobs and of expertise to get over on what is actually capable of being discerned and communicated by the individual. Only an individual could defend the finite, the order of the finite. Only an individual could defend the species body of volume. The courts and the police forms, they're not, they're speaking grouped. They're speaking for each other grouped. They can't help it. Things before they're brought to court, they're given, they're fabricating audio and video evidences. And it's every spot that they use. Because this method is using our value / value progression, better than perfect, never been challenged, never been discerned. It made self-value, that fake identity and the fake difference, as means who they do this wrong, because they have our bodies shared there, our countries. Now we are grouped individually and together. Tactical ulterior from Humanity's Voice. Tactical ulterior from Humanity's Voice, the way it has us grouped and the way it uses value. Because its identity as hyper invisible, like every identity, has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, has relativity to value simultaneously. Value has simultaneously relativity to positive and negative to discern this. The hyperscience that is identities. But it is tactical ulterior from these you've entertained at all communications platforms and sustained, because these are fronts. Now, so all we needed, one, is to have mandated law followed here or anywhere in the world, and revelations come. All we have to do is use what's true always, not telling the slightest lie, not valuing the slightest lie, being or having been told. It's not significant. Not significant. For example, like criminally foreign influence database relationships. So those laws were so crazy, and if anyone broke them, international companies that were already fighting with themselves, the countries. Then they're fighting with other countries. They're fighting with their own companies themselves. The complete possession, individually grouped and together, of a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise that we can together counter here, even if we're wrong and one doesn't exist. This is means to counter the identity of negative value nature progression. But it is further than that. There was conscious uses. So Little Rap Guy and friends are charged with where they have the American side of the cartoon value nature system counter-extorted. They have the whole world counter-extorted in the Little Rap Guy and Friends series, cartoon series. They're anti-hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, anti-human fact-cheating nature breaching method. anti-constitution, abridged, and screening that, pretending, oh, they're just defending their identities, because otherwise people will go crazy and attack the Capitol. They'll riot. That dishonestly they say those things. People rolls with whole predicate acts methods with databases and motivations and natures of things that are also tied to other things bad, individually grouped in together, that we know with the known, unknown, discovered, and what they do when they discover all that. Perfectly contained by the breaching method. So there were proofs that hyper Native American chiefs and the chief ran, in other words, there were proofs that Native American chiefs, before our founders were born, and while they were being born, and I'm coming to understand the slavery method against themselves. No one had free speech, or you're sentenced. Entertaining uses of positive treatments, negative treatments that were prohibited. Simultaneously entertaining. If you discern entertainment of identity treatments that are prohibited, you could discern that. They still have used remote. You know how many? In other words, this breaching method knew that they would use things like the immunity from prosecution that the branches have individually grouped in together, self-value, where and how they're pretending to be against crimes, but they've been roles with predicate acts, as you all have at each age of your fact-treatment nature, communicating and or having had communicated to you, other than our founders who had to extort the other founders, other than the Constitution unabridged and grounded as the proper justice definition, appearance of justice definition, not leaving out the smallest finite detail. That's what nature reveals. Is something going to be true to the word of the finite? Is something true that to what came past before, when they make opinions, convictions about American history? It is only increasing value as itself, as the extent of we could discern of it, where it is hyper invisible but still discernible. An identity of volume that way. The one that is conjunctive to those five identities of order, simultaneously its way positive to itself or negative to itself. And that's one of the things that keeps leaf IDs positive to ourselves, even though it's negative. It keeps slavery. It will only show the increasingly value of discerning how that's criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments and of identity treatments. There are things that are natural, but only as criminal insidiousness. This is what nature reveals. Lawyers have been planting evidences at locations, planting fake motives. Oh, it's just my job. That's why we have to address how identities are now through a filter that can't defend themselves and us at the same time. There was a summary judgment YouTube channel that is involved with people from Russia with the name Peruta. I don't know if they're related to that Peruta. Never had a conversation with him. Walked by him one time. There's no exception. In other words, and there's someone who lived down the street from Mike Violet and their parents. I don't know if they had a sister. I never had a conversation with them. They might have taken a picture of me going in there one time. Because these are people with the interbranch and foreign that have been planting predicate axe rolls where they're not even at the locations. They're affecting confessions and demonstrations, just like they did to the Native American chiefs to make the Native Americans fight with each other, to make and keep them unities or fighting either way, and increasingly separated from what their words would have been had theirs and had anyone's education been unabridged, as it had been in ancient times, as it had been in semi-ancient times, before the sciences became tactically, criminally foreign influenced. There are proofs that they had known what criminal foreign influences were. Ancient times, semi-ancient times. But it was not as bad. In other words, the whole world knew how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures, or negative by checking. Is something true that came before? In other words, the value of true before the order of the smallest finite detail now. Before the order of the finite now of the Republic's body. That's only increasing value. What really was true before that. One thing that was true is that against the Native Americans had already been sustained the same breaching method that our founders rose to overcome. Half calling themselves chiefs. Because we can't be they couldn't be Native Americans, but they had to be. Because everyone's now entertaining words and systems tactical ulterior from the human bodies, which is hyper-native pure. Native groups are additionally this, because that's nature showing us the system's abridged. And it's not going to stay this way. It's going to make criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatment, native identities, make them negative value nature progression. Negative value nature should be consumed for positive value nature progressions and evolution somewhere else. Leaves of Hadith. Earth's concentrated difference is getting forced away from here through us. And self-value, because that's how we used everyone remotely. Still using everyone remotely. What's most essential about a republic is pantheism. And what's most critical about pantheism is how the ancients understood where if there's an ism involved, we're dealing with the invisible but still discernible. So it's not that which answers questions. If you contemplate, in other words, understanding the breaching method against the Native Americans is increasingly valued, because that's understanding the breaching method against the sciences unabridged. They had been abridged already. They had been fact human nature enslaved. Regardless, they made money from it. Who didn't. The ones who came over here from the other countries used us remotely. Even if that is as ourselves, if we're not Native American. We have to appreciate this union because we have to get the species bodies' names individually grouped and together back to its uses of it. If we discern that, so where they make economic, where they debate and discuss issues, they can't defend themselves and not leak because it's recorded. They're consciously men and women and little kids. Every location, area, and state. That sense, increasingly, and her as a tool used remotely. Those who use what is actually we are actually capable of voicing at each age, actually capable of correlating at each age. We could discern that in how the Native Americans were sickly distinctly from people forced by the pigment called black, tactical terrier from the black pupils. No one, everyone left that out. We could discern that too. And from ourselves, everyone's sickly distinctly when we see the potentials we have. Since before cars, before our founders were born, the suburbs were designed with slavery entrenched north and south, a torture method, a slavery method, all exceptions, exception nature, designed to pretend other, but being further into the same thing. Not just to screen it, not just for torture with it, kill with it, not just to possess the sciences unabridged, not just to make self-valued roles and so we can use that remotely. Witch trials, real or made up, they're about remote uses of the branches of government's fact-keeping nature details, finite details, active group details, and the value of what their consciousness regarding what's to come. If you deal with the details of what the cities are, for the suburbs, let alone the city, but the cities, they were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And the exceptions were effectively set up for a whole bunch of functions, where and how exceptions, exception nature are now syntactically and programmed. And with programming, we use tactical ulterior from how nature's programming works with our mind. So they have tactical delusions when they speak regarding what extremism is, regarding each of their religions individually grouped in together. Our formal stewards of them have them tactically with tactical delusions defended and other pretended with passions and emotions. Forgiveness is because they pretend things are personal, everyone, because they're preventing the actual qualities of fact, nature, timing, the uses of it from being demonstrated. For example, we're supposed to have they have roles, natures, opinions that will not help still. Where and how the interbranch, because also the interbranch in the foreign with the religious spots, with abuses of kids' roles. Still the campuses. That's child abuse. Pretending not to realize. Pretend to be against. In other words, no one's for slavery. If someone says they're for slavery, they're lying for some reason. So everyone will say, "Oh, attack that person." That's the person you want to talk, but not the way they want them to. Rather, like when they remember they used to have on the sitcoms back in the day, they used to put the KKK person up there, and the counters to them. Everyone's speaking about the law. No one brings up the revolution. No one brings up how the North and South were both entrenched with slavery because they were both enslaved. No one brings up how our founders didn't have free speech or they were incensed and hurt and killed and worse. No one brings up how they had the counter restored just for a little time they could. But you do that for a little time. Now the breaching message system, everyone's going to sense and discern. Everyone's going to get hurt. Now they had to value help because 13 states at once. So then they gave them a way to fight to be a country. But they had to stay roles through that plan, still incapable of forcing that quality of fact, human nature that will not leave out the smallest finite detail. This is where we can how we can force those with the right to lie to be demonstrated, being having been used remotely. Even if not, not just the blame is we're looking for the hyper invisible but still discernible. We're not looking for blame. We're looking for what's true always, not denying the slightest detail. Science has not spoken for the suburbs, let alone the cities. Science has not spoken for our means, free, let alone with that, waste our resources. Only reason we went to wars. Not because money, but if they say money, then that's the fact, human nature conviction. It's not really honestly against it, even if it's in other words, in other words, we went to war because we're not following the nature system. Self-value our roles with negative value nature progressions, acts in nature, because the only means to cause positive value nature progressions were propagated by the breaching method. If there were going to be collusions, as timed collusions, at locations with the worst causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures. Negative value nature progressions acts like predicate acts. Natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoers, criminal enterprises themselves, including the SS modern countries, A through Z, hyper-criminal enterprises. Archetypal criminal enterprises being used remotely by a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise to an extent discernible, this. Partially because they don't follow mandated law. Partially because they don't respect the law while pretending other, and the breaching method collusions with that. When these nations individually grouped together leverage upon each other, good or bad, is recorded still collusions with those criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative and value treatments to measure and maintain identity treatments incapable of defending their syntax and of affording discern. What even the ancients knew how to discern, how really to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, nature means out of nowhere. Evolution's fruits and gifts. Not all this technology for junk. Oh, it's not junk if there's a war. Who's that said this? It was the Caesar who said, you can conquer from the back of a horse, but you can't rule. And so, we left out all the logic. None of those debates were sane, were legitimate. They got away with it because of what they've been doing in the database at each age of fact, human nature. People can't defend themselves and afford discern. With little kids that could discern. It's going to have the people who've been speaking political A, therefore B narratives and natures, sense and need to hurt from other locations too. We have the police forms and the difference of them on and off the campuses. There was a Rob Rodriguez that was, I don't know if it was him, but I just want to make it, there was one of the shootings that was not too long ago. Looked like he might have been one of the people, and he looked over at the camera. There was also someone from near that Mark Viola house tied one of the religious spots on Route 3. It's also all different religious spots. Enrolls people with a Jewish community center, for example, with the courts and the police forms in East Hartford locations, with other types of police for religious locations. This is insidious uses of insidious definitions scientifically of religions as collusions with the Constitution unabridged can't afford an individual to have means that we do. Show how lawyers and too planting evidence at locations worse for their motivations narratives. A breaching method knew that nature would continue to demonstrate itself to us. It effectively employed those demonstrations, blamed the other things others ourselves because of how it employed roles, needs, and natures as criminal and sadist natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments, only known since them ancient times. That can't afford the revelations that come from any individual using short words and truths that aren't being used for lies, that aren't valuing tactical lies and delusions, juxtaposed with, truths used for tricks like that, truths used for lies, truths used with lies increasingly. The Republic is about an ancient, criminally foreign influence today, never liberated, at last, to use Martin Luther King's phrase. We are a republic that was revealed by humanity, that was working in other words, that was being led by, that figured out how to answer all questions through this contemplative method, more probably having been called algebraic consciousness / consciousness algebraic. So what's positive to one identity of itself? So we'll examine this. But if you want to end war, you have to follow mandated law. And it makes problems with other countries because they're hiding behind those individual countries, individually grouped in together. And if you speak about it, you have to use examples by picking one or two of them out first. Or you have to list and a whole bunch of sensibilities here and there, suits and ties, counters to it. They can't accept the answers that we have. They can't accept the means that we have native pure. Native Americans will tell you, this is not a free identity, the ground identity relationship to itself, its waters, its roles with the gases, its roles with the conversation about positive and negative. A cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall are three distinct identities of relationship to itself. A trinity that come also with two other identities of reception of and two other identities of value progression in reception of gases, so we and with the excretion of them, so we could discern it, and with the reception of water and its elements, so we could discern it. Right. Each. CT is cherry tree, not oak, no peach. What to blame is the identity of negative value nature progression. If you won't blame a breaching method. I mean, if you won't blame a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. If you won't blame that, at least you have to blame a breaching method. If you deny that, your logic is going to show inherent active and progressive criminally foreign influence qualities and aspects in nature, fact treatment of fact treatment nature, a value treatment. Again, tactical ulterior from how and why. We need to enable use of how functional the hyper invisible but still discernible is. And where and how it is value as nature / nature is value, left to right, while it is simultaneously value as nature, nature is value, right to left / this is about the Trinity. There is a picture of Jesus Christ on the Yale website. It has Yale University. It has a picture of A on the left side of Jesus' A and a W on the right side. The history of England doesn't remember because the individual bodies of the species body were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to defend themselves, tactically ulterior, fact, human nature oriented wise, from how nature is demonstrating us to. Now, they didn't realize the breaching method knew that they could increasingly use that remotely. Everyone, against everyone, and or as collusion against everyone. Tactile terror from how nature wants us to be independent / unity, and simultaneously wants us to be unity / independence. See, individual, grouped, and species body of volume. So we're forced reliant upon mass farming, each modern country, per the torture / slavery method. Also, the World Trade Center attack had roles furthering and undermining why and how the constitutional amendments have to be valued simultaneously, or they can't be defended, as they have not been. But other has been pretended, hasn't it? Way worse than crimes are the people who've been using our roles with the predicate acts, whole predicate acts methods, and tactile delusions with the people using words like crimes throughout our countries, individual groups and together. Yeah. So native way. And the debate about that, because we are all hyper native. But we have to free the hyper native way. And we can't do that if we're lying about how the Native Americans have tactically denatured ground below their feet, whether they are a tribe that has been successful economically or not. There is complete possession over every individual voice, or that person is hurt, attached to fake words anyways, everyone. Fake words with those around us too. Effectively where you used relevant where and how they made time treatments and excuses. Even when they have legitimate excuses, those were made for them. Where they have fact treatment nature, formal, evidence treatments, formal, identity treatments, formal, that can't defend themselves and afford discern nature's answers. So every individual should contemplate like you are the mother or father of the entire species volume. And we all got kidnapped. And so all the bad things everyone's been doing to each other, don't forget you're their parents and you know what happened to them. You know that everyone, when they used anger, loudness, or, calmness, when they use words like peace or war, it was criminally seriousness, natures of peace, syntax nature. Nothing is binary alone. Nothing is diacritical alone. Nothing is there's a Russian phrase years ago, dialectical materialism. There is a third quality of diffusion here, where it is its identity as volume, hyper invisible but still discernible. Its identity of relationship to itself also increasingly valued simultaneously with that. And the value of that also increasingly value, increasing as that. And this is inside. We are from inside, where we could also discernibly tell. In other words, there's an extent of the history we know. There's an extent of what is active now we know is true always. And there's extent to come that we know is true always. New York City, cities across the globe were set up by a breaching method, forced only capable of being Already they had employed the suburbs designed and sustained, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, while they were employing means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and narratives increasingly reliant upon mass farming, increasingly reliant upon that which divided the Native Americans, not to conquer them, but to employ everyone. Names and locations uses tactical terror from how nature is demonstrating us to use them. Because it knew that nature would demonstrate that. And it knew that it could get them to blame those things on other things other than themselves. Blamed on George Washington slavery. Leave out all the proofs. They didn't have free speech, they had to hide their roles, counter extorting the other founders' interstates. Hey.